Okay, all right. So we're talking about business resources. Okay, okay. So we're talking about business resources. We're gonna just do a brief recap, but then we're going to focus a bit on people as one of the key aspects of those three. Remember, I talked about three things. I mean, you can see in the picture here. This is a picture of an average organizational meeting. Could be anywhere in the world, to be honest. It looks like there's a bit of coding going on, so it's probably a software company. But we all have to engage with people generally, right? None of us is a complete island. We engage with people somehow or other, and if we're going to work, we're going to have some sort of engagement with other people at some point. Does anybody here play team sports? Anybody play team sports? Soccer, basketball, rugby? Basketball. Okay. Anybody else? I always wanted to play more basketball. Never got an opportunity, but I played football myself. But anybody else plays team sports? No. Or anybody part of a band? Anybody got in a band? Let's be honest, if we're playing in a team sport, if we're in a band or if we're in a drama show, we all have to work together, don't we? Everybody has their role to play, okay? And if it's not enough for everybody to do their role individually, collectively, we have to perform as well, don't we? Yeah. And to be honest, that's the essence of all of this, because we will talk about finance, we'll talk about accounting, we'll talk about operations, we'll talk about marketing and so on. But ultimately, it's working with others, trying to figure these things out and doing certain things, certain disciplines or processes to make it all work, right? So people are really, really important. And that's why I guess we're going to start with people as a key point, but we'll revisit that shortly. All right. We were talking yesterday. Here's a couple of other pictures that we saw somewhere. Here's some of the pictures from yesterday. So we got this idea of what sort of production was, what sort of operation was in one sense. And, you know, partly the idea here was what are the factors of production that we need to bring this to bear? So our learning outcomes, you know, which I know you guys will have addressed in the short survey question link, know how human resources are managed. Okay, how do we manage people? And Peter Drucker is a famous management guru called Peter Drucker, and I think the quote is attributed to Peter Drucker. You know, management is the art of getting things done through people. Okay, so how do we manage human resources? In one sense, it's a terrible term, human resources. It implies humans are just resources to be used. But it does deal with the fact that we have to work with people and we have to get people aligned and moving together. Are there any soccer fans in the class? Okay, well, nobody else? Okay, I'm the only one then. Okay, so if you were a Manchester United fan, you'd be very disappointed and disheartened at the moment because the team are not performing in any way, shape, or form. So it will be interesting to see what happens, because it is only 22, 23 years since Manchester United won the treble. Right? They won the Premier League, they won the FA Cup, and they won the European Champions League. Okay, and now it doesn't look like they can win a match, right? So we've got to understand how that happens in any type of organization, and how the reverse happens. How does Liverpool, unfortunately, do really well, or Manchester City even worse? Or how does the Indonesian national team do? Or how does the Malaysian national team do? How does the Irish national team do? It doesn't matter what sport it is. So that's where we want to go. But the first part to that is, who do we bring onto the team? What do we need? Where do we get them? How do we get them, first of all? And then once we've got them, Then in the future, we'll be talking about how we manage them and how we work together. So the first place will be, how do we get to human resources? And we're going to start with the basic recruitment and selection piece. Then we're going to talk about managing physical and technological resources. And then we're going to talk about the money. Okay. How do we manage money? All right. So that's where we're at. I'll save this till the next class. If you haven't had a go with that link, please do for the next day. We were talking about SpaceX yesterday, talked about mission control. We talked about what resources were in terms of it being an economic or productive factor. And we kind of got to this stage where we talked about business resources. And our focus is on sort of these three areas: human, technological or physical, and financial. Okay. So we're going to talk a bit more about the people stuff today. Actually, we'll do that the next day. We'll leave that for the moment. So you guys know Formula One, right? You guys know Formula One? Okay, let's have a quick look at something. Let's look at this one's relatively recent.
Here's a simple ball striking technique that's helped thousands of beginner golfers go from barely
rhythm. Rhythm.
188, 1 second 88 to do what? What happens in that almost 2 seconds? All four tires get done. All four tires on a car, a racing car, get changed. Okay? So let me just do it one more time. Okay, so what's going to happen? The car has to come in, it stops, each of the four tires comes off, okay, and gets replaced, and maybe the visor gets wiped. That's pretty much it. It's only got 2 seconds, right? In this less than 2 seconds. Like wheel off, wheel off, wheel off, wheel on. This is how it works. Okay, and so you've got to have a number of people around the car. Okay? This is what we're looking to get to. Okay, in every organization, really, this is what we should be striving for. So, what does it take to do that? Well, what does it take? Teamwork, absolutely, yes. Expertise, yeah. Training, very important. All of those things, which actually means investment, right? You've got to put the money in to hire the people, to, get them focused, to provide the training, to build their expertise. Then you've got to practice, and then you've got to do it right, don't you? Yeah. So all of those things. Right? So if we talk about this, we've got to understand the processes and requirements, understand what we're trying to do. And the same thing applies if it's a restaurant, if it's a heart surgery, if it's building a satellite, if it's building a transistor radio, which is probably old technology now, if it's building a mobile phone, identifying the actions, identifying the skills and behaviors required. So what do we need for this? Well, for this, we need people. Actually, what do you think? What are the skills or behaviors that we should be recruiting for here? What does somebody need? Quick action skills. Yeah, that's good. Okay, what else? Mechanic skills. Yeah, okay, to a certain extent. Yeah, I mean, I think so, because they're not going to be there just for this. They're They'll have other elements that they need to do as well. Okay, what else? That's important. I think you've got to have the right attitude. Not panicking, having calmness. So, let's be honest, what's actually happening? Somebody is driving a sharp implement, because it looks kind of sharp as a car, straight at you at about, okay, it's slowing down, but it's still coming in at anywhere from 50 kilometers an hour. Okay. So now you're hoping, you're trusting the driver to stop on the mark, because if the driver doesn't, or they get their lines wrong, it's not really going to work. Okay. And the car has to come in right in between these lines and stop on these markers, don't they? Calm, not panicking, trusting your colleagues, trusting the driver. Okay. And of course, when the car stops, you've got to do your thing, haven't you? Doesn't matter which part that it is. The first, the nut, the drive, the driller, the person with the power tool has to slot their thing on, pull the trigger, take off the nut. Okay. And that has to be done within a fraction of a second, within about half a second, really. Okay. So it must be a very powerful high-speed thing. It's got to slot right in and hit the trigger at the right time and come off. Okay. Come back far enough that the person who's grabbed the wheel can swing the wheel off, and that they have to know exactly, they've got to move it the right way. They can't just swing it out because they hit the person who's kneeling beside them. They have to lift it up effectively, so they need a bit of strength. And the other person has to have their wheel ready to go on, and it has to slot on. Now, the good news is, have any of you ever changed a car tire? All right. Okay. Well, you've got a pleasure coming for you. But when you're changing a car tire, a normal car tire, it doesn't happen in 2 seconds, let me tell you. The wheel, the normal car tire has 4 to 5 nuts on it. Okay, so each of those has to come off, which means that there's 4 or 5 holes. So the tire has to go on, and you have to line up the holes. The good news, there's only one. It's just the one big one. But still, the tire has to go on spot on every time. So you're right. We need dexterity. We need cool heads. We need physical dexterity and the ability to focus. Probably need some pretty good hand-eye coordination. So we probably need hand-eye coordination in terms of, you have to reach and put something in the right place at exactly the right angle at the right space at the right time. So all of those are some physical skills, if you like. But I do think calmness and the ability to learn and be committed to the process. What about the person at the front with the jack? So they're there. Their job is to lift up the front of the car so the tires can go on and off as it comes in. But they also have to drop the car, but they can't drop it too early and they can't drop it too late. And as soon as they drop the car, they have to get out of the way, don't they? And somebody else has responsibility for shouting go, for reading. I mean, how many other people are around the car? There's about 20 people around the car. And they have to shout go based on reading where every one of those is at the right time, so that the car can shoot out without knocking anybody off. I'll leave that alone. All right. So that's what we're looking for, right? So do we need the same set of skills? Do we need the same type of person if I wanted to hire somebody to answer calls in a call center? It's a different setup. And that's kind of what we're thinking about. We now need a process to identify the skills, to find the right person, and to determine if they're the right person for our organization. So that's what we're going to look at next. Okay. And the reason we're going to look at this is partly because of this. So if you look at this list on the right, so this is an extract from Fortune, is an American magazine. So this is an American magazine looking at American businesses. And they do an annual best place to work thing, which you may do in your own countries as well. We do it here in Ireland. This is the best place to work. And I think this is the list from 2020 or 2021. Okay. So the top 10 are there. Hilton, Ultimate Software, Wegmans, Cisco, Workday, and so on. Do you recognize any of the names on that list? Which ones? 1, 4, 9, and 8. Okay, 1. So what business are 1 in? So yeah, so that's Hilton Hotels, right? So it's a whole hotel chain. 4 you said as well. So 4 is Cisco. So what is Cisco involved in? What type of business? It's IT equipment and networking, isn't it? Networks. 9, American Express. What's American Express? Yeah, basically a bank. So the American Express card is your charge card, not a credit, although there's a charge, there's an American Express credit card as well. You also said Stryker. Stryker is involved in, yeah, medical tech. Okay. So what we see here, I'm going to take this one, I'm going to copy this because these guys are also some sort of finance business, I think. Cisco, of course, is IT, but it's not the only IT business on the list. So Ultimate Software is software. It's IT, it's software. Okay. Workday is again, it's IT. It's sort of software as a service. Okay. So it's a bit like, signing up for a software, a particular application that they run, as is Salesforce. Salesforce is another example. Salesforce is an online CRM piece. And Kimpton Hotels and Restaurant, well, let's be honest, it's back in the hotel space, isn't it? It's hotels and hospitality. Okay. The only one you probably don't know is Wegmans Food Markets, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a grocery chain, grocery store chain. Okay. Now, why am I going through that process? Well, why? Remember, these are the top 10 on the best places to work list in whatever year this is. Okay. This best places to work is based on surveys of employees across the country. Like, thousands upon thousands of organizations apply to be on this, and thousands of organizations and staff will fill in surveys, and they crunch all those numbers and they've come up with this list. I'm going to take these guys off the list. I'm going to take the Ultimate Software, Cisco, Workday, and Salesforce off the list. I'm going to make them slightly different color. I'm going to put them in as beige. Now, make it green, make it a little bit more obvious. Okay. The reason I'm doing that is, if you think about it, apart from Cisco, who are making actual routing equipment, everything else is cerebral. A lot of what they do is based on people's brain power, brain work. Okay. It's sitting at computers, coding, and doing that sort of stuff. And that means that that's their primary productive resource. So it's really important for the company to look after their people, to keep them focused, keep them engaged, keep them working, right? Because that's it. It's not equipment based, it's brain power based. Okay. Now, the other thing about the IT companies is generally they have tons of cash because they churn out cash. They're very profitable. They're cash rich organizations. They don't have to maintain expensive equipment in factories. Yeah, they do have to run offices, but they don't have to, run, big production lines and all that sort of stuff. They don't have to run hospitals. So they have money. So that helps them spend money looking after people, and it's in their interest to do that. I'm also going to take out the banks, the bank and finance pieces, not because they have loads of money, they do, but I'm also taking them out because, most banks aren't on this list. So these are exceptional in one sense. And I guess, they probably sign up to the fact that, a key part of their competitiveness is in how they treat their people and people treat their customers. And that's relevant. But again, banks have loads of money. I'm going to take out the med tech because it's the one that stands out on its own in one sense. And Striker does have a name for being a very good place to work. People are interested time and time again. It's on these sort of lists. So they put a lot of work into, looking after their people and maintaining their place on these types of lists and so on. But these three here are interesting. Okay, the first and 10 are similar, but the other one is a grocery store chain. But what do those three have in common? What do those three things have in common that sets them apart from the other 7? What do you think? What do they have in common? Are they high-tech businesses? They're not. I'm not saying they're good business. I'm not saying they're not smart businesses. They're just not high-tech businesses. Sure they're not. Like, what do they actually provide? What's their output? Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it, Kent. I mean, the hotels are giving services. They're providing a human service. They're providing an element of security, a place to stay. And the one that you could say it's providing a room, okay, and there's that. But these hotels, there are other hotels that are much more stripped down. These particular hotels are sort of people rich. So there's a check-in, there's staff, there's cleaning staff, there's waiters, there's room service, there's all these other bits and pieces, all whose job is to support the guest in the hotel, okay? Wegmans is slightly different, but again, it's quite people intensive. These three are all people intensive. Their business, their effectiveness depends on their staff doing their job. Their effectiveness depends on their staff engaging with the customers, presenting a happy face. You don't want to buy your groceries from a store where somebody is in a very bad mood or is nasty or racist or giving out or, you want to buy your groceries somewhere where you think, okay, I'm happy with this store. The groceries are good. Things that people are treated right. People are doing the right things. Like a restaurant. I don't eat in a restaurant that where the wait staff are having a really bad day. I don't really want that because I know they're not going to be taking care of my food. Okay. So these businesses depend on their staff performance. Does that make sense? It's not based on IT. It's not based on manufacturing. It's not based on, finance. It's based on people. And therefore, for those businesses to be successful, they really need to look after their people. There are lots of hotels, there's lots of grocery stores where they don't look after their people that well. And I think that shows in the performance of the business. Now, some business owners only want to do is squeeze as much money out as possible. Others are more focused on growing their business and their brand and everything else. So that's why I thought this list was interesting. That 3 of the top 10 businesses are not high-tech, are not manufacturing, are not finance. They're ordinary, basic businesses. Okay? And that's, it's like we talked about on the previous slide. This is why people are so important. They're a crucial factor of production. Okay? And I think it's easy to look at this in another way. We are investing in people. Now, if you recruit somebody for a job, actually, it's a sizable investment. How much do you think you invest? How much do we invest in people? If we were to hire somebody, what sort of an investment are we making? We're making an investment of money, yeah. How much money? It depends on what we're going to pay them, doesn't it? But it's not just that. So let's look at this. Let's say we hire somebody today, and let's give them a reasonable salary in Ireland. Let's say 50,000 euro, okay? Right? So that's about 60,000 US. Well, at the moment, actually, it's about $50,000, okay? It's a lot of money, but for maybe a graduate, it's not that. In Ireland, it's not bad. It's okay. It's probably about average. It's for somebody who's maybe working in manufacturing, that could be salary. They could be on more than that. They could be on less. Right? So they're going to cost us 50,000 the first year, okay? And they're going to cost us 50,000 the second year and the third year. And assuming that they get no raise. They're going to cost us that every year. Okay, so I'm going to add in a column here. I'm going to call this cumulative. I'll put this down here for the moment. Right. So in the first year, they're going to, yeah, it's going to cost us 50,000. If they stay with us for 2 years, it's going to cost us the 50,000 there plus 50,000 year 2. If they stay with us for 3 years, it's 150,000 and so on. Okay. If they stay with us for 20 years, we'll have paid them another 10. We'll have paid them the same again. 10 by 50,000 is 500,000. What am I missing there? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's the first 10 years. That's what it was. It's sort of equals to the sum. That's the first 10 years, right? If they stay for 20 years, again, without any sort of raise, we're talking about €1 million. If they stay for another 5 years after that, for 25 years, which is a career, okay, that'll be 250,000. Okay. Oops. So that would be okay, 1.25 million. And that's assuming no inflation. Okay. So if we add inflation, you know, at 1% of the previous year, you know, that's what the annual would be. If it was at 2%, you know, we'd be saying that multiplied by 1.02. Okay. And so on, right? So how will we show this? So, and that would gradually increase. Actually, so let me just do this. So in year 2, be okay. Anyway, you get the idea, right? I'll work up the calculation later on. The point is, I mean, forget about that here. Even just look at if there's no inflation, no pay rises. If somebody works for us for 20 years, we're talking about a total of €1 million, okay? Close to $1 million in today's money, right? So if we hire somebody on what looks like an average or a reasonable salary, that's what we're talking about. Even if we brought it down, let's say we hire them at 30,000. They never got a raise, right? We're still talking about, okay, so this would change. We're still talking about 750,000 over 25 years or 600,000 over 20 years. And the reality is that they're going to get a raise. There's going to be inflation. So when we hire somebody, we're making a significant investment in people. Does that make sense? If they stay with us, if we keep them with us. So it becomes a really important thing to hire, to make good hiring decisions. And, you know, that brings up the question as to how much we pay people. I mean, there is this phrase, if we pay peanuts, we get monkeys, right? We should be paying somebody, you know, what it's worth it to us to hire them and for them to take the job. right? And to commit to the organization. And that becomes a movable feast to a certain extent, but we should be getting that right. We shouldn't be looking to squeeze people in terms of their salaries, because if we do, they're not going to stay, they're going to move. And actually, they may be somebody we want to keep. Now, there may be other people that we want to lose, and that's fair enough. But, you know, we do need to sort of bear in mind that this is a very important decision. So what we've seen is that, you know what, there are very specific skills for every job. We need to understand what those skills are. That the best places to work, the places that are really committed to their people, generally tend to be the places that end up at the top of lists because it's important to their competitiveness, right? So if we want to be competitive, we have to look after our people. And that means it's a sizable investment. So we need to look at this idea of our first resource, of our people, okay? Who should be interested in this? Everybody should be interested in this, in my opinion. People are the most important part of any organization, okay? And we're all going to face hiring challenges at some point, either to get hired or hiring somebody else. So if we're going to work, if we're going to be working, if we're going to be building our own businesses, if we're going to be working for somebody else, we are going to face a relatively frequent need to recruit and select staff, to bring people on. So we need to know what we want them to do. We need to know the type of person we want, and we need to figure out where we're going to find them. So have any of you guys ever been through a recruitment process and not got the job? I know some of you are working, some of you aren't. Yeah? Okay. It's disappointing. Do you know why you didn't get the job? Okay, well, that's good. I don't always get a yes answer to that. You didn't match up exactly against what the key requirements were. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. It could be that there was a better candidate. Unlikely, of course, unlikely. It could be that the hiring manager made the wrong decision. It could be that there was somebody who was better than you, or there was somebody who was fairly equal to you, but you made a better impression. So there's any number of reasons that could cause a hiring decision in certain ways. And some of those hiring decisions will be right and some will be wrong. But be under no illusions here. Hiring managers do not always get it right. Okay? So it's important to think about this and see, well, how could we improve our odds? Because we've seen how important it is in terms of having the right skills. We've seen what the investment side of it looks like. So it's really important that we approach this effectively. So we need to look at this. So central to this is this idea that we have to think about our human resources as a key component of our business. We've got to manage our human resources on a couple of different levels, a key element of which is around finding and recruiting, okay? So we're going to focus on recruitment and selection as a specialist activity, okay? Now, we're not going to go into too much detail in this module. We're going to cover it off in this module, but there is a complete separate module on this as well, which is important because you guys will all be looking for jobs at some stage. So it's a specialist activity that managers should be familiar with, in my opinion. Particularly in big companies. In big companies, we tend to leave it up to the HR department. And I don't think that's necessarily good, because if I'm hiring somebody for my team, I want to be in on that process. So that's kind of what the context is. So we need a good human resource system. Now, we're going to focus on recruitment and selection, but there's more to human resources than just recruitment and selection. We need to think about things like training and development. We need to think about things like labor relations. We need to think about pay and benefits. We need to think about performance appraisals and feedback. So there's a number of different components to managing people. It's not just getting them, it's rewarding them, it's managing them, it's developing them, okay? And it's making sure that they're doing what we need them to do. Now, in larger organizations, we tend to outsource some of this stuff to other parts of the business. Like there may be a payroll department, there may be a HR department, there may be a training department. My own gut feeling is that if I have a team, while we may outsource elements of it, I need to be involved in oversight and feeding into those processes, because I know what I need to get done in my unit. I have a clear idea of what we're trying to do and where we're going. So I know that I want my people to be able to do X and Y and Z. And that's an important part of this. Okay. Now we're going to focus in a bit more on recruitment selection for sure, because I suppose that's where the focus of this module is. But it's a key part. What do we need? Where are we going to get it? How much is it going to cost us? How are we going to make sure we get the right person? How are we going to hold on to them? So these are all questions that are tied in with that idea of making the right match. Okay. So for effective recruitment and selection, to make sure we hire the right people, we need to think about a couple of things. I think you've got to start with our corporate objectives. What are we trying to do here? What are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve X, we're trying to achieve Y, we're trying to establish this business, we're trying to grow our business. So that can have a significant impact, but it's not just skills-based, it has to be linked to where we're going in our strategy, because we shouldn't just be recruiting for today, we should really be recruiting to build the team that's going to take us to the championship. And that might take us a few years. So I think we should always start from what business are we in and what are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? And being clear about that, because that has implications for the type of person and their skill sets, but also the values and the culture of the organization. Just a bit of interest, have any of you guys, are you aware of organizational culture? Is that something so I mean, those of you who are teaching, you're teaching in language schools generally. So if you're teaching in a language school, does your school or your college have a certain ethos, or is there a culture? And how might you describe it? I mean, there's lots of different cultures. Okay, the bottom line is every organization has a culture. It just may not be what you want it to be, okay? So the culture in the business is kind of a function of what we're trying to achieve, as well as the values and the principles of the people who set up or who are managing or inhabiting the organization, and what they think is important, okay? And that can be quite interesting, because some businesses, it's all about the money, or it's all about keeping the cost down, or it's all about, squeezing as much out of it as we can. In others, it's about how do we build a better organization? How do we build something for the future? And those have influences on what the corporate objectives are, what the aims of the business are, and how we treat our people, okay? So that's an interesting perspective. And that's why, I like to start with the list of the good employers. So they know what they're trying to do, and that influences their process of recruitment and selection. So we need to know what our overall aims and objectives are. We need to understand what the structure of the business is. And by structure, I mean, what units we have, who reports to whom, where people sit, what responsibilities we have in different areas. What does that structure look like? Okay. So if it's a soccer match, it's, do we play a 4-4-2 formation? If it's a hospital, what's the story? What's the breakdown between nurses and doctors? How many specialists do we need? Do we set up to treat people holistically, or do we set up to treat conditions? I mean, that's a fundamental issue there. Do we have a rheumatism department? Do we have a cancer department? Do we have a neurological department? Do we have an emergency department? Do we have a digestion department? Okay, which is the way the vast majority of hospitals are set up. Or do we have something that says, we have people focused. So somebody comes to us, we treat them holistically. We talk, we've our organization set up in teams, so we can draw on whatever discipline we need for that person at this time. So there are different ways of doing it. So what's our structure? What we're trying to do, what's our structure? And therefore, what's our approach to human resource planning? Now, the idea behind human resource planning is this. So if anybody, does anybody cook dinner occasionally for 4 or 5 or 8 people. Okay, so what do you have to do if you're going to cook dinner? Yes, prepare, decide the recipe, yeah. Okay, and then what do you need to do? Work on the ingredients, yeah. Potentially acquire the ingredients. Now, the acquiring the ingredients may depend on what you already have, doesn't it? So, okay, if I'm going to have a rice-based dish, have I got enough rice? Yeah, I need to go get some more rice. I'm going to need some fresh vegetables. I'm going to need some fish or chicken potentially or whatever. Maybe I don't need spices because I've got a rack of spices. So, but every time I do it, there might be some sort of changes in that. So I need to appreciate what I'm trying to do, what the meal is, what the ingredients required to deliver that meal is, what do I already have and what am I missing? And then I need to go get what I'm missing, don't I? If you're running a household, what that might mean is you might think a week ahead. You might think, okay, I'm going to go to the shops once a week and I'm going to buy stuff for each day. And I've got my staple stuff, my pasta, my rices or whatever. And I don't need to buy those this week, but I'm going to need to buy them next week. And then there's stuff I need to buy every week. And then there's the special items for this day or that day. So we do effectively a sort of a resource planning. It's the same thing as human resource planning. We need an approach to determining what skills we need, what values and all that sort of stuff. When do we need them? Where do we need them? And where are we going to get them? Now, if we're talking about ingredients for dinner and we're talking about the fresh ingredients, well, we're probably talking about a local market or a local grocery store. If we're talking about certain skills for our business, it might be that we have to go to a university to hire new graduates. It might be that we have to go to a special website where engineers list their skills to recruit engineers. It might be if we need certain experiences, that we need people with experience, that we go to a certain jobs board. It might be if we need a very specific type of manager or leader, that we do an executive headhunt, where we get a specialist to go out and identify somebody that we try and poach. Do you know what headhunting is? Can you guys still see me and hear me? No? Okay. So headhunting is it's a very specialist activity. So it's where, let's say, what happens is normally for very senior positions, where we decide we need somebody to come in and run this business unit, or we need somebody to come in as the chief executive. And because our chief executive is retiring or whatever. So we might decide, rather than go for a public competition, that we know the type of person we want, and we'll recruit a specialist recruitment agency to do research in the marketplace to try and identify somebody, and then to reach out and ask them, would they like to take this job without even applying for it. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to entice somebody who's not looking for a job necessarily to come over to our organization. So it's a very specialized type of thing, and that, very, very niche. Most situations are different. In fact, most jobs are probably filled by people we know in the private sector. But there are obviously competitions and job boards and everything else. So, but it's within that context of what are we trying to do? What sort of organization or what sort of structure do we have, and what's our sort of strategic human resource planning look like? That helps us decide which of these avenues we take. Because our strategic human resource planning should build on the fact that we've got, 20 people in this business unit, and 4 of those people are actually capable of doing this job. So we should be looking to promote internally rather than bringing somebody in from outside. And that can be an important factor in this. It's not all about going out and bringing somebody in. It's about managing the development of our staff as well. So it's not just about, I suppose the key thing is don't ignore who we have. Try and look and see, well, who has the ability to do more? Who has the ability to grow their career? Because that should be something we do. If we develop people internally and they work their way up in the organization, they can be really important, valuable assets to the organization as well. So there's that aspect to it as well. But it all comes down to a process. And I'm just going to introduce this process and then we'll pick it up the next day. So if we focus in on the human recruitment and selection piece, so there are 3 key stages. We'll talk through the piece on the right in a minute. The key process stages are job analysis, attracting applicants, and selection. Job analysis is about what do we need done? What is it that we want? What do we need to recruit for? Attracting applicants is about getting people interested in doing the job, getting them to apply. And then the challenge is to select from the applicants somebody who will do the job. Okay? So that's kind of what we're about. And that's sort of broken down on the right-hand side of the slide. Starting off with HR planning and personnel management, action program, that's a very fancy title. Really, it's all about planning. It's trying to get ahead of the curve and realizing that, okay, Kinza is going to retire in 2 years' time, doing a really important job for us. We need to replace Kinza. Let's start planning for that now because Kinza is due to retire, okay? And now maybe we can make a special offer so Kinza stays, okay? But if Kinza wants to go, we're going to need a replacement. Do we get somebody inside or do we bring somebody in from outside? So if we know the retirement date is there, we can work towards it. On the other hand, if Adam gets knocked down by a bus tomorrow, and we need to replace Adam immediately, it's an emergency. It's a different type of approach. So we've got to figure out what we're dealing with. Ideally, we want to be proactive as much as possible if we're doing the planning piece, okay? And have that sort of planning piece in place. When we've decided what we want and where we're going, we need to consider things like sociability and technical competence, because what we're doing is we're doing this job analysis piece. What type of person do we want? How will they fit with the team? What sort of skill sets should they bring? What sort of character should they be? What sort of team player should they be, right? And there are differences. Not everybody is a team player. What are we looking for who will fit into the team? Or alternatively, who will shake up the team? That might be something we're looking to do as well. So we've got to consider around those issues. Of course, we've got to consider any legal requirements. If we're recruiting for a doctor, then somebody needs to have a medical license. If we're recruiting for an accountant, they have to have an accounting qualification. So that might be something, or it might not be, it depends. And once we've got those sort of things sorted out, then we need to look in detail at the job analysis. What is it that if we were to hire somebody, what is it that they need to be able to do? So when we look at job analysis, what we're really trying to figure out, what skills do they need? So maybe, like we talked, maybe we need somebody who can speak fluent Malay. Okay, maybe that's a mandatory requirement. Okay, any questions? Okay, we're up against time for today, so we're going to continue this the next day. We've got a bit to do. We're going to talk through a process. We'll look at it. We'll look at this in a little bit of detail, not too much, because I said we'll be doing another module on it. And then after that, we're going to start talking about technology. Okay. Thank you very much, folks. Talk to you later. All right. Talk to you later, folks. Bye-bye.